Hello and welcome back to Explaining Acro. I'm Ben and this is Cassandra, and today we're going to be teaching you Relocate.
Before working on relocates, we recommend being comfortable in reverse hand-to-hand and having familiarity with step-step into reverse hand-to-hand. If that skill is new to you or you're still working on that, we have a video which you can watch here or you can find in the description below.
The first thing that we want to talk about is what we're going to be doing with our hands. Now, the thing that really matters for this skill is that at the point that the base is reaching hip extension, the flyer wants to have their hands with the fingers pointed towards the base. In order to get there, you have a couple different options, and we've seen people be successful with both of them. The main options we see are starting in the position that we're going to end up, as well as starting with the fingers pointed out. Personally, it feels really rough on my wrist to have the flyer's fingers pointed forwards at the bottom, so we do it with the fingers pointed out.
Additionally, fingers forward for me, that often is putting my wrist at an angle where I'm having to go uphill, and it's nearly impossible for me to get over the base enough. So that's why we start with our fingers out, and as the skill goes, we rotate them.
In general, I'm leading that rotation and she's just allowing it to happen. Often we see people doing this skill and they're both doing things and it does not come up smoothly. Now that we've talked about what the hands are doing, we're going to focus on getting the flyer loaded onto the base and having the base stand up. As the base here, we're establishing our connection, and I'm going to be providing a tempo for the flyer in order to reach this bottom position. I'm explicitly not pulling them super wide or moving quickly. I'm giving a smooth, predictable tempo, usually with the cadence of my breath, in order to get down here. The flyer is going to be pushing into their knuckles, and I'm going to be meeting that with this line of push from the base of my index finger to the base of my thumb. There should be contact throughout the hand, but by having this little bit of kind of opposing push here, it provides a clear line to push into, and it lets me know where the center of mass of the flyer is. For standing up itself, I'm going to be just waiting for the flyer to start to load onto me, and then I'm going to stand up and do really nothing with my arms other than really think about pulling them onto me. The biggest mistake that I see is providing weird tempos and yanking on the flyer as we're starting to load into the skill. Another thing that can go wrong is that rather than pulling the flyer onto you and keeping your hands close to your shoulders, you might have the flyer jump slightly in front of you or keep the arms too far in front. This is going to pull you forward and not put you in a good position in order to actually lift the flyer.
Flyers. So this is one of the first steps to really understanding what our arms and hands are doing for this skill. So as Ben said, we are doing this pathway and the base is gently leading it, and we're letting that happen. We're not trying to fight them, but we're staying connected during that. So we take hands and we follow this path. Once we get to the bottom, the most important thing here is that I have straight arms. I'm straight arms and I'm going to be pushing down as I get on top of the base. And as Ben said, we are trying to pour our weight into our knuckles. And that's just going to help us create this connection and stability throughout the rest of this skill. And after that, we do a slight jump onto the base, leaning our shoulders over, squeezing our butt while pushing down with those shoulders. I want to talk about a few of the common mistakes that we see when doing this progression and learning this mount into Relocate. The first one is flyers not getting the weight poured into their knuckles and riding more on the heel of the hand. This prevents the flyer from getting over the base enough for this skill. Another common mistake are the shoulders not getting over the base enough as we load. And once again, that just doesn't allow the skill to stay in the line that we're looking for. Another mistake we often see are bent arms as the flyer loads. As they jump, they're straightening their arms in the middle of the skill. This adds a lot of just extra movement and instability that isn't necessary. And one other common mistake that we see are flyers not squeezing their butt and being in a piked position.
Once we're comfortable standing up, it's time to start adding a little bit of power. Bases, the goal here is to translate this hip extension into a press all the way to extended with a little bit of extra power. If the flyer's hips are barely coming off your hands, that's exactly what we want to be doing at this point. We'll be adding even more later, but for this drill, we just want to focus on that. The main thing I'm thinking about as I'm pressing is really keeping that pressure at this part of my hand and making sure that I'm not arching my back so that I'm providing a clear path and wall for the flyer to push into.
Flyers, this progression is very similar to our first one, but it's going to test how tight we're being. So in this drill, because there's more power being added, we need to make sure that we're engaged and being able to receive this power from the base. So that means tight core, squeezing the butt, and engaging the shoulders and the hands, because this power is gonna help us figure out if there's any energy leaks throughout this skill. The most important thing I want you to focus on here is really noticing when that base is popping, because when we do a relocate, that is when you're gonna go into that hand-to-hand position. And I want you just to start to build that awareness so you can feel it and understand what that's gonna feel like during the skill. During this drill, flyers, I want you to start looking and focusing on what you're seeing and where your eye gaze is. For me, as I'm loaded on, I'm looking just down the back of the base at the floor the entire time. I want to take a moment to talk about some of the common mistakes we see with this progression. The first one being flyers losing tension in their body. Because we have this additional power from the base, it's going to let us know real quickly where we are not tight. So we want to make sure we're squeezing that core, our glutes, engaging our shoulders and our hands to be able to receive that power from the base without getting thrown off of them. Another common challenge that we see with this skill is that the pathway of the hands might feel wobbly or might feel like you're fighting the base. And there can be a few reasons for this. One of them, from the flyer standpoint, is maybe we're loading with our arms bent, and then during the skill, we're trying to straighten those arms. And that can just result in additional movement and fighting of this pathway that we're trying to work together to create.
As a base, we really want to make sure that we're putting ourselves in a position to succeed. So that means we really want to be arriving to this point of hip extension with hands that are no longer moving. If we're still fighting here, we're going to cause exactly what Cassie said. One of the other big things that I see are excessively arching the back or not providing pressure with the knuckles. This can make crazy things happen with the hands and make the flyer not feel secure. And finally, you might not be strong enough for this skill yet. So get in the gym, start doing some overhead pressing. No shame, you just can't do the skill yet. Another thing that we really want to focus on is providing smooth acceleration for the flyer. We're trying to get to a point where we're providing a lot of force, but if we're standing up slowly with the legs and then suddenly move quickly with the arms, it's going to feel really jerky and the flyer's going to have a hard time reading it. So we really want to make sure that we're sequencing into things such that the hip extension transfers smoothly into the arms and we just continuously accelerate.
Once these progressions are feeling smooth and comfortable, it's time to start doing the relocate. While learning this skill, it's good to have a spotter. There's a few ways you can spot this, but we recommend spotting it as you would as a reverse hand-to-hand. You would grab the flyer's wrist and shoulders, and this would help you to protect the flyer from going over by pushing their shoulder. And you also have their wrist in case anything happens, you can pull up or you can help stabilize.
For the relocate itself, as a base, I'm doing things very similarly to before. However, there's a crucial distinction. Whereas before we were really just trying to press the flyer to here and like maybe give a little bit of extra power, now I'm really trying to throw the flyer's hips up in order to give them the extra momentum they need in order to actually hit the handstand. Once I've given that throw, I'm gonna leave my hands up there for a little bit and I'm going to lower them in order to help the flyer finish their skill. I'm making sure to keep pressure in the hands as I'm lowering in order to make things smooth and controlled rather than kind of quickly pulling the flyer's hands underneath them. While this can help the flyer stack their hips on top of their wrists, on top of their shoulders, it feels and looks really jerky, and this technique is not going to eventually let you get to extended reverse hand-to-hand, which should be your eventual goal.
Flyers, now that we're doing the relocate, we're going to make a few slight changes to the progressions we just did. So first of all, it's really important that we are pushing back down into the base throughout this whole skill and meeting their push. And this is going to help us be able to get into our hand-to-hand and also create this predictable connection. As Ben was saying, if a base pulls us down quickly or drops, then the ground disappears from us, and that can feel scary or unpredictable. If we're continuously pouring our weight into their hands, then it becomes more readable and predictable. Another change that we're doing is instead of being in this really open front load position, we're gonna bring our feet under us just ever so slightly. And that's just helping us create a shorter lever so that when the base gives us this pop and we push into our hand-to-hand, we have a shorter distance to go. Lastly, we've been focusing on building that awareness of when does the base pop. So flyers, now that we're doing the relocate, when we feel that pop from the base, that is our cue to push down and to kind of straddle up into a hand-to-hand position. I'm sure you've heard this cue before, but for here, when you feel that pop, you're gonna wanna pull your pants down, or rather push your pants down as your legs complete the hand-to-hand. The other really important aspect here is focusing on the eyes and where the gaze is. So as we are riding up, we're looking behind the base at the ground, but once we snap into that hand-to-hand position, we wanna look at the chest of our base. So we are changing that eye gaze, and that's really important for helping us hit this handstand position. When we're teaching relocates, one of the common mistakes that we see is the position of the head. So as we spoke about, flyers, we wanna look behind the base, and when we snap into our hand-to-hand position, we wanna put our eye gaze to the base's chest, which puts our head in this position. If our head stays out, it's nearly impossible to get into our handstand line that we're looking for. And alternatively, if you get into your handstand and tuck your head too much, then you have the risk of falling over the back of the base. Another common error we see in this skill are flyers piking too much into this skill, or often pressing too early into that handstand position before that base gives the pop. And what this does is, first, being piked puts you farther away from the base and means that you have to work that much harder to get back over them. And also, you might end up kicking your base and giving them some aggressive love taps, either on their chest, their belly, or down here. And that's not ideally what we want to do.
Thanks for watching. Let us know how the skill goes for you in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content in the future.